Reasons of why an RFE is issued, and what are the heightened scrutiny and resultant RFEs for H-1B in financial year 2021. I think we pretty much discussed
Right.
on this.
Right.
Yeah.
So the only part, the last part, which is, I think, what are the issues with the RFEs in 2021? There are issues because there's some new laws, which, maybe we can discuss next episode, but there's some new laws that we need to look out for, and that might result in new RFEs. So right now, we don't have to worry about the right to control RFE. We don't have that anymore. We don't have to worry if the person is getting a wage level of level 1. Before there used to be RFEs on that. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Specialty occupation is something that we still need to worry about. So if you file a systems analyst, for example, there's some red flagged positions. If you file those, for sure you're going to get a specialty occupation RFE in 2021 also. There is some change. If there is some change with reference to wage levels, and people start, because of that, people start using private wage surveys. So basically there is a bill that has been published. There is a regulation that has been published, and the DOL wages have gone up by 50%. And it's going to start in June. So if that happens, then people will start using private wage surveys. So you can expect that there'll be a kickback from USCIS with reference to private wage surveys, and you can expect RFEs on that front for this 2021 cap season.
So what to do if we get a specialty occupation RFE? Right.
So if you get a specialty occupation RFE, you have to document that according to the industry, you have to show that in in the same industry, other jobs, they all require, most of the time, not always, but at least if you show that more often than not, they require a bachelor's degree in a specific field. And you can show that by job postings. You can go to DICE, you can go to Monster. I'm talking about IT positions because it's just that a lot of H1s are filed for IT positions. You can get a letter from other companies saying that they always hire people with a bachelor's degree, say in computer science for this particular position. You can get an expert opinion letter from a professor in computer science saying that, this job usually requires a bachelor's in computer science. There are many things actually that can be done to show that it's common in the industry. You can take printouts from the internet, again from newspapers, from ads basically showing that it's commonplace that companies always require a bachelor's in computer science. So basically you have to show it's common in the industry. Another thing you can do is show that even if whether it's common or not in the industry, the job is so complex that a bachelor's degree is required. So you have to then explain the complexities of the job, why it's different from other jobs, why a bachelor's degree is required in this job. So that's another way of showing it. And then, of course, you have to show that the person actually has a computer science degree. So you might have to get an evaluation of the degree to show that it is from an accredited, university, if it's a foreign degree. So these are some of the things that we can do to respond to specialty occupation RFEs.
Okay. We have a caller online, Raju from Bangalore. Hi, Raju. Yeah, I think call got disconnected. Let's continue with the questions. I think we discussed what are the reasons for the wage level RFE. Yeah, I think it got covered. And also currently there is a news on USCIS extends flexibility for responding to requests until March 31st, 2021. Can you help us understand the background?
Right. So we discussed that actually. So as I said, there's that 80 or 85 days.
Yeah, plus 30.
Anyway, right. Plus you have the 60 days to respond. So that 60 days is the additional time given due to COVID reasons to respond to any kind of RFE or motion to reopen or notice of intent to revoke, or whatever it might be.
What is maintenance of status RFE?
So when you file a change of status from an F1 to a H1, say, let's take that example first. When you file a change of status from an F1 to a H1, first of all, one of the criteria is that you should be in status in order on the date of filing the H1 in order for the H1 to get approved. So that is one of the criteria. And so they will send an RFE wanting to make sure that you have maintained your status. So if you are on an F1 previously and you're changing to a H1 now, they can ask several questions. One is if you're on an OPT, they can ask questions on whether you met the requirements of your OPT, your optional practical training. Optional practical training, you're supposed to be at least volunteering. You can work for free, but at least there has to be some work. So they will make sure, they will ask for a letter from the employer wherever you worked. If you worked paid, then you can provide pay stubs and W-2s. If you volunteered, then you have to show that you can get a letter from the employer saying that you volunteered or interned at their office. And also the work has to be it has to be related to your job. So you can't work in a gas station if you're an IT professional. That will not you will not meet the requirement then, and you'll violate your status. So that's, for example, if you're an OPT, that's what they're looking for. Similarly, if you're in a CPT, they want to make sure that you receive the CPT through valid grounds, meaning what's happening is a lot of students, because they are not getting picked in the H-1B cap the first time, second time, and they don't want to leave the country, they keep doing courses. So they'll go from one master's to another master's, and they'll take CPT because they want to continue their employment, and the STEM OPT is only for, even if you're a STEM person, if you qualify, it's for 3 years, but still it gets over at some point, right? So if they want to continue extending their job and they didn't get their cap picked or whatever the problem is, they take CPT immediately upon joining the organization. It's called day one CPT. Or even if you don't take CPT day one, but you take it 3 months later, whatever the reason might be, whenever you take it, whatever the timing might be, they'll send an RFE asking for whether you maintain your CPT or not. First thing is whether you're eligible for CPT. So they'll ask you to show that the CPT that you took was an integral and essential part of the course that you were taking. So if you're doing a master's in computer science, you have to show that the job was an integral and essential to your course. You can show that by showing how the job was related to the subjects that you were taking. You can tabulate it, do it in a tabular form and show these are the jobs, this is the course that I was taking, this is how it is related. Also a letter from the university or a brochure from the university showing, stating that it was an integral and essential part, and that the coursework is such that it cannot be learned unless there's a practical training aspect to the course. So that's how you show that CPT was required. Also, one of the RFEs that we were getting on CPTs with the new administration, as I mentioned, was that they said that if you took OPT 1 year and the OPT period is completed, you use the maximum OPT period that you qualified for, and then you did another master's level, meaning you didn't go to a higher level. If you went to a higher level, such as a PhD, you get an additional OPT period, right? But if you do another master's, what they're saying now is, the law establishes that you cannot get another OPT period. But now they're extending that law to include CPT as well. And they're saying that you cannot get an additional CPT period also. They're extending it to CPT as well, that interpretation of the law. So we've received some denials, RFEs, when people have changed from one master's to another master's and immediately taken CPT. So that's something that students should be aware of and be wary of before you decide to take CPT. So that's one thing with CPT. Now, another status question that we get for the students is, sometimes oftentimes, especially when they're on CPT, they're studying in a different state and they're living in a different state because they're working in a different state. So they send extensive RFEs asking how you can possibly work in one state and study in another state.
Right.
And they are questioning this because they want to make sure that you're not doing online classes, because you can only take 2 online courses per semester. And so they want to make sure they're not violating it, because if you are taking more than the courses allowed, online courses allowed, then you're violating your status. So then we often show documentation, because then the way these universities have classes, they usually have them on weekends, or like, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's how they have, they've organized their curriculum. So we show that, they fly on the weekend or they drive. So you have to show flight tickets, hotel bookings, parking, to show that you've actually gone to class. And of course, attendance records from the university, assignments that you've submitted in person. So there's a whole list, like sometimes it goes to hundreds of pages, documentation that we have to show. Maybe expenses that you incurred at the university, maybe you went to the cafeteria, you bought something, just to show that, it's an in-person class and you didn't take it online. So that's the other kind of RFE, that we get for students. So I think these are the main RFEs you get for students. Now, maintenance of status can be for any status. It could be if you're on a B2 and you want to maintain maintenance of status. RFE would be pretty much your I-94. They want to make sure that you were on your I-94 and it hasn't expired. So you have to submit an I-94. So if you don't, they'll send you an RFE asking for proof of maintenance of status. Or, for example, if they find out that you have worked illegally, because you can't work on a visitor's visa, maybe you worked on a gas station or somewhere and they came to know, and that's a maintenance of status RFE. They'll say, oh, it came to a notice that you worked at so-and-so gas station, show us that our information is wrong. In the same way, suppose you file a H-1 extension, then your maintenance of status is, it's not enough just to have an I-94, which is valid, though that is required. But they'll ask for proof that you actually worked. So there are 2 elements to maintaining a status in the H-1. You have to show that you are on the payroll and you have to show that you have a valid I-94. So in order to show that you're on the payroll, you have to show pay stubs. And if you don't have pay stubs for some reason, you have to give proof of why you don't have it. For example, if you were on unpaid vacation, which you took, and the employer didn't force you to take, but you took it on your own because you had medical reasons, family reasons, then they will ask for a letter from you to the employer requesting that leave and proof that the employer has granted the leave. If you're not getting paid the prevailing wage, sometimes maybe you're on the payroll, but your W-2 is lower than the prevailing wage. Even then, you're not maintaining your status. So you have to show proof of what happened. Did you take leave? That's why your W-2 doesn't show. Then you have to show all the pay stubs the entire year. And if you have some excuse for not doing that, which is accepted by the law, then you have to document it. For example, you stopped working for 3 months, or you went to India and you didn't have to be on the payroll, right? You can document it that way. Or you can show that you filed an amended petition for decrease in the hours. Maybe your job changed from a full-time to a part-time. Okay. So as long as you did what you needed to do with USCIS and you got USCIS's approval, or at least you filed a petition for the amendment, you can show that receipt that you filed it. So maintenance of status, depending on which status you're on, they can ask for different kinds of documents.